let's see. I'll just call out the officers. Ed Darlington, he's on board this evening. And primarily we'll use some of these people to answer questions, but feel free if you want to answer to jump in and join. Steve Messbarger, I saw him on, I didn't see Cecil Sweeney yet, but I saw Cecil's brother, Chad Gilliland, Robert Burns, that'd be me, Jolie Weiner, Cheryl Burkhead's on. I haven't seen Joe Patrick yet or Becky Tipton, but they might have just joined.
Yeah, they're on.
Okay, great. So I guess just to jump in, I was using this for a screenshot. So this is the monthly Q&A session. So what I'll do is I'll take questions that I've gotten in the last several days, and we'll take questions in the chat too as we go along. So.
This is Travis.
So this is the monthly Q&A. We try and invite our Kansas Honey Producers Association members on here also. Keep them.
Yeah, it's great so far.
Involved.
My jaw's sore, but that's just because I keep my mouth open the whole time. But we'll find out tomorrow.
Let's see who that might be.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks for the call.
Looks like Travis Morgan.
All right,
Travis,
bye-bye.
Thank you.
Travis, mute yourself.
Okay. Well, just to give you a clue how it's supposed to look, the temperature outlook for June looks like we're going to be in the above average in southern Texas because of the heavy rains they've had. It's supposed to be on the cool side, so lucky for them, but they're pretty warm anyway. Our first question tonight came from Joseph Becker, first of the month, and it seems like he may have problems with small high beetles. So his question was, he was stating he found an outer frame with worms on a 6-week package install. So this came from a package. Joseph, are you on this evening? You may not be here yet, but he froze the frame. He's asking, is it reusable? What are the worms? And any action to take, as this is a weak hive that he's struggling to determine what to do with. And just to show you some of the pictures, this is one of the pictures from the small hive beetles from his frame.
On Mondays usually.
Any officer out there would like to jump in on small hive beetles to address his question? He's frozen it. Is it reusable? And what are the worms? I don't think Jim Kelly has any problems out in the western Kansas with it.
Cecil says it's.
Yeah, if it looks like in that picture that they've already slimed that honey, so you probably are not going to be able to reuse that. All the bees won't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, so that slime technically is a combination of something that they put out and also a fungus, from what I've read. So it really causes the bees to want to abscond and leave the nest. We do have something on the website. If you go to necpa.org and the publications page, you can find at the top some information on small hive beetles.
So in this case, you would pull the foundation piece out and just replace it with another one?
This is drawn comb. You know, it's worth the price this time of year. With them building comb easily, I would say, yeah, it depends on the severity. I think I've got some other pictures on here. I had a case where my neighbor had a situation earlier this week on a hive, and we found lots of these little things. This was on some tarp that I had put out, but we took a bucket of water and washed the frames, dunked them in there a couple times, and we were able to reuse those because they weren't slimed too badly. Some of them that were aren't going to be reusable, but some are. So there is a little bit of hope. Anybody else have experience?
I don't have experience. I just have questions. So this is a 6-week-old package, and we know that those are opportunistic pests, that this is a weaker colony, so they're going to take advantage of that. But I wonder what else is going on in that colony, because is it sitting in a marsh, or is it, I mean, in deep shade so that it's really not in the sun? We know that full sun is better. Is there a healthy queen in there? Is this a growing colony? And man, that's a lot of damage. A 6-week-old package should have pretty much filled your bottom box and been strong and able to defend themselves. So it makes me wonder what else is going on in there. And we're probably going to talk about Fun Day a little bit tonight, but I'm going to talk about Jennifer Saruda and what she I mean, this is old dog, new trick. Fun Day, she showed some pictures of from Kentucky, lots and lots and lots of small hive beetle down there, big problem for those people. And in some burr comb on a top bar, pictures of small hive beetle eggs down in this burr comb. I have never seen that before. And her point was, see this, take care of it, be proactive, don't ignore those little things inside your hive. Great advice. But I'd never seen it before. And I just was astounded that it's like, oh, who knew? So there they were, this huge sign. Once your hive has larvae dropping out of it, as his obviously did, something big is wrong. And I would like to know what the underlying, what else is going on in that colony besides just a small hive beetle infestation. That's my question. I don't have answers. I just have more questions.
Yeah, and you know, we don't see the whole picture, and so it's kind of difficult to make some of these diagnoses. But like, this is obviously not a frame that this new package would have drawn out, because it's you know, from a different season. It's got stored honey in there. The comb has already had brood in it, so we don't know what the other conditions of the combs are, and you know, package may not have had a really good start. We just don't know, and he's not on yet, so he'll probably see this recorded, so hopefully that'll answer some of his questions. But you know, don't want to end up with these, and you don't want to let them crawl away and get into the ground and go through their life cycle. But you can reuse the frames. You know, he froze some of his, and that obviously, like killing the eggs for wax moth, will also kill the larvae and beetles. So that's one way to salvage some of your comb, but I wouldn't say that you probably be able to save all of it. So anybody else want to say anything or make a comment? Okay. Next question, if we'll move on. I know that was kind of quick. Krista Henry has a question. Her question of the month is, she's learning to companion plant. So this looks like it's directed more towards some plant person. I'm learning to companion plant my veggie garden, and the herbs have always been good choices for deterring bad bugs and attracting good ones. The peppermint plant's the only herb that she's not getting a definite answer on. Do any members know, and this is the question, for a fact, if bees like peppermint, or does it deter them from the area that peppermint is planted in? And I think Cheryl Burkhead is a good plant person. So
I
if
don't
you
know
don't mind, I'll
anything,
pick
I
on
don't
you,
know
Cheryl.
anything about peppermint, Robert, but it's like mint. It's very invasive. I don't know that I'd want to plant it in my vegetable garden unless I had a way to contain it, or it will take over the entire bed. I've not had any experience with peppermint since I've been keeping bees. I would imagine they'd probably like it. My issue would just be the invasiveness of mint in general, and I've never put it in my own vegetable garden. I keep it separate in a raised area or where it's got, some landscape timbers or something around it so you can try to contain it. It'll seed itself out in the yard if you let it.
Jim Morford's on here tonight. Jim has grown about
Oh,
a
yeah.
ton of mint.
Well, what we do with the mint is Wanda was just saying here while you were talking about it is that she has a number of varieties of mint, but she always in the bottom of a larger pot, maybe 5-gallon or so, she will put screen, fairly fine screen, like window screen in the bottom. And that way the roots will not go down and invade into another area. We've never had trouble with it actually seeding, Cheryl. So I not had any trouble with that. But that's the way to contain it. I can't tell you anything about companion planting in reference to this kind of thing. But in general, honestly, as bees are looking for things to forage, they haven't spent a ton of time on our mint in the past. In fact, very little time. So as things go, they obviously find other things to have more pollen and nectar than any of the mint family. We've not had much luck with anything in terms of seeing bees on it, even when it's blooming.
I've used mountain mint and had a good response with it, and it doesn't really seed out, like you said. It spreads by its root system. So if you can contain it somehow, like you're doing with the window screen.
Yeah, I would second Jim's comments on the mint. We've planted lots of different mints and never had any bees attracted to it. Now you talk about oregano, thyme, and some of the other herbs. They just love those plants, but I've never had them on the mints at all. So I would say it'd be probably not a good choice for companion plant unless there was some other reason that you're planting it.
If I may, this is Joe Patrick. I went to the source and I got Peter Lentner's book, Garden Plants for Honeybees. And for peppermint, he gives pollen source 1 star out of 5 and nectar 2 stars out of 5. So that's a pretty ho-hum plant. I kind of appreciate where she's going, thinking the peppermint might deter some other insects. But as far as a nectar pollen source, it's not very highly rated.
I'm sorry, Joe, what book did you say that was?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a Garden Plants for Honeybees. It's Peter Lentner's book. And he's my go-to if I'm doubtful about whether something's a good nectar source or not.
And we have that in the library, and when we are able to meet again, you can probably find it. And so she was adding also, she says she has them in huge buckets and lots of land, so she's not worried about the invasive part of it. But if the peppermint's planted next to squash, will it keep the bees from pollinating the squash?
I don't know about that. A lot of times what you want to accomplish with companion planting is enticing the bees into the area so that they, in addition to the attractive bloom, they're also going to come back and work your squash blossoms or your watermelon or your cucumbers and that kind of stuff to help increase fruit set.
Great, thank you. I'll move on to the next part. Marsha Harmon is asking, first, some information. This is our 3rd year keeping bees. We've built up to 3 hives in the backyard. Since we're still building up, we don't have many drawn out frames to give the bees to work with. They have 2 supers with fully drawn frames and 1 super with a few frames drawn. She'd like to harvest honey and end this season with more drawn frames for supers next year. Well, Marcia, we're all trying to do that. So her question is, if I put a super with new foundation below a super with drawn comb, will the bees draw out the new before they work the super or drawn comb above it? Question number 1. I'd be inclined to ask Jim Kelly. He's out there in the West, but
I don't think they'll work it before. If the 2 drawn comb above it were actually full, then they'd begin to work it. It also depends out west here how much of a honey flow is going. I've seen several people try that with a small honey flow and really slow, and then they tend to put wonky comb in it. So I wouldn't put too many other supers on top if you want that one drawn out, and then put it on when a honey flow is going really strong. That's the time to put it on.
so put the foundation on and then put the drawn comb on after it's being worked.
Yeah, once they start working it, then you can put that second one on above it, but I wouldn't put 2 more on top of it because they're just going to abandon the foundation and go up and fill the top. But
So they'll just bypass the empty foundation and move straight up to the drawn comb.
yeah, out here they will. It's
Okay.
it's a heavy flow. They just bypass it and go right on up and fill up the other 2. So often when we're drawing out our deep supers, we're going through about the time to top super, and we find those that are completely full, and then set those 2 supers down and set the deep in between. And as long as the honey flow is still going, they'll blow that right out.
Okay.
When's the honey flow?
Well, Western Kansas, it's kind of hard to figure that one out. It's actually kind of beginning now, but you have to rely mostly as far as major flows to draw out comb out here. So we don't rely on wildflowers at all because there's very few. So it has to be something like yellow sweet clover or white sweet clover or alfalfa, and then they'll get right after it and blow it up. So it'll start. It's starting now, but there'll be some fields of alfalfa that'll be cut down, and that'll draw it down to a smaller lull. But it will continue, and you can still draw comb out here till about the 2nd week of August. Then it dies down rather quickly.
Thank you, Jim. So Marcia's question number 2 is, should she checkerboard some of that undrawn with the drawn, or would that jeopardize her honey harvest possibly?
I don't think it would jeopardize the honey harvest. She can checkerboard it, but make sure that you have 10 frames in there. If you tend to put 9 in because part is drawn comb, you're liable to get wonky comb again. They may not connect it correctly, and you might have it sitting on the outside of the board instead of right on the frame of wax instead. So it's something to do. We've done it before, but if you want perfect comb, put it all in one box, 10 frames across.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question, also from Marcia. This is number 3. Which bees are the wax builders? The workforce has to expand energy to build the wax. Does giving them new foundation to work keep the bees from depositing more nectar for honey to harvest? Jim, would you like to finish?
Well, I'd say the one with the wax builders are probably the ones with the helmets on, the concrete helmets. So it does take a lot of energy. And you know what, for hand, I can't remember exactly how much honey you lose per pound. I'm sure somebody over there knows what that is, but how much?
Yeah, supposed to be 8 pounds of honey to make a pound of wax.
There you go. So yeah, you're gonna lose some honey production on that to build the wax. That's just going to be part of it.
So
Marcia,
knowing
you're just
that,
getting started.
so knowing that makes it that kind of goes back to my other question. if I put a foundation that hasn't been drawn, if they were going to work it, they're going to spend more time working that and expending energy, and they're not going to fill the super that's already got the comb that, or the foundation that's built out to fill it with nectar.
That's somewhat correct. You have, it's depending on whether you're a honey producer and that's your top production, you have to think about when that time is. That's why we generally go back in, then it's top supering time for us, which is about the third week of July. We already have supers on at this point in time that are full, and that's when we'll move that in there. At the same time, you have to think about the future. As some of your deep combs or your other combs getting old, and maybe it's time to move them out. So it's kind of a draw. You're either looking for immediate money or future money, I guess you'd say. So that's where the beekeeping comes in at.
Okay. Well, I only have 3 hives, so this is a hobby for me, not a super business, but I certainly want to take advantage of everything we can.
Great, thank you, and thanks for the question. I got this a little bit later, so Andrea Levitt had some questions. She did a sugar roll on 3 hives yesterday. 2 hives had no mites, and the 3rd hive had 5. So she's researching treatment options, and there are complications with the outdoor temperatures, level of brood in the hives, and supers being on. What's the best strategy is her question. Wait for cooler weather, do a Formic Pro, take off the supers and treat another way. Let's see, Steve Messbarger, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
What would you recommend as the best
Probably
way to...
this time of year and the heat that's coming on, I'd probably go with oxalic acid.
Vapor or drip?
I would treat the 1 hive, but I think I would almost do another sugar roll on the other 2 that didn't have, that had, as I say, didn't have any. They had
Correct.
2 hives. No mites. I would double check that, but I would definitely treat the one with 5 mites, and I would probably use the temperatures are getting up there where you have to check out every option of treatments and temperatures, and with ours getting up in the 80s, that's getting pretty high for a lot of it. So I'd either do a vapor or dribble and try to knock down the load that way. I think that's the safest way.
Too warm for Formic Pro. I guess it's showing it was 88 today. It's right now still 84. So
yeah, I'm not for sure what the temperatures are on Formic Pro, but that, to me, that's more, I use it in the fall. That's my option this fall, but I wouldn't use it in the middle of the summer.
thank you. She has got a couple other questions. I guess pertaining to this, should she be removing drone brood from the hive since it's later in the season to reduce mite infestation? And I don't know if Andrea's on. If you could tell us, are these just random parts that have drone comb, or do you have drone comb in there intentionally, or?
No, hi, Robert, it's Andrea. No, I'm just talking about just the drone comb or the drone brood that's naturally in the hive that the queen has laid. I don't have any special frames for that.
Is it
okay?
Is the drone comb, is that on the bottom of your frames?
It is mostly.
It won't hurt to cut that off after it's capped. A little
Okay.
help. Yeah.
But they're workers are female, they're girls. They always want to have boys around during this time of the year, so it's going to take some effort to keep that controlled. The other part, third question was, what is the cutoff time frame for doing split? What would you say, Steve?
You want me to answer that?
Yes, sir.
Or go ahead. I think as long as you can get queens, you can make your splits, but At some point, you have to worry about, are you going to winter them over on a single hive body, or are you going to try to bring them out? So there's a lot of people. I think, Robert, you're successful at nukes over winter, so you might interject on that.
Yeah. Oh, well, for me right now, the most important thing is the honey flow and the honey season. So that's been my goal, to get the bees ready for this time of year, and I wouldn't start doing any kind of increases or splits until after the nectar flow is over, which is the first part of July. And July and August.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Elaine needs to mute her computer, and I wanted to ask Andrea whether she has seen the Honeybee Health Coalition publication. They divide the treatments into whether your hive is growing. Just lots of different choices to consider, and looking at the most effective treatments for doing that. They also suggested that if, actually, I think Jennifer Serta even talked about this. If you have a hive that has honey supers on it, but you need to treat that hive, you have two choices. Ignore it and know that you may lose the hive, take a risk, roll the dice, or move those honey supers onto another hive, treat that hive for however it needs to be treated to do a successful treatment, and then put your supers back on there. Those bees won't care if you move those honey supers around. That's not going to be a problem. But treating that hive, unless you are willing to risk losing it, is a problem. And at 5, I also agree with Steve Musburger that you probably should redo those sugar rolls and verify that. To have that disparity between the two is pretty high. But this early in the season, to have a mite count of 5 mites in your sample, that's a pretty high mite count, and those mites are still growing rapidly. So Honeybee Health Coalition, free publication, probably the best thing on the market out there, and it's free.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing, Becky, is they talk about treating early in the spring for mites to knock the load down before it gets out of hand all through the summer. So I'm blank on his name, but he's in California.
Randy Oliver?
Yeah, he's an avid about treating in the spring and then treating in the fall. So I did treat this spring. It's the first time I've really gone after it in the spring. And the one thing I found with, I used Apigard, and I like Apigard, but it dries out way too early. The effectiveness is the evaporation, and the next time I use Apigard, a lot of it says 10-day treatments. And so the next time I'm going to do 7-day treatments, because usually you go back in 7 days, it's dried up, it's done. So for me to get all of it, I'm going to go to 3 7-day treatment. But I won't be using it this year again. So that's just kind of a little something that I've been noticing more and more about Apigard. I don't know whether they've changed it or what, but it dries out pretty quickly. So that's just a little observation that I found out in the last couple of years.
Thank you, Steve. And so that's the end of the written question. So we can move to the chat. Some of those probably have already been answered, but again, this was the June 4th temperature outlook forecast from the Weather Channel, and looks like we're going to be warm.
Robert, I heard my name. I had to move out of the room because I had some other background noise. Was there a question?
We're done with the written questions. We're going to the chat right now, so we'll see. Some of them have been answered, and if I go up to the top, anybody else? So Ed, the first question we had from Ed was he's got some drawn comb that he wasn't able to freeze, and so he'd like to use the acceptable material that's the moth crystals, but it's not the real moth crystals. But tell him the name of the correct chemical, and I wrote in there that you want to make sure you're selecting it. The active ingredient is paradichlorobenzene. I may not have spelled it correctly, but that's what you want to look for. If it doesn't have paradichlorobenzene and it's mothballs or crystals, do not use it. And then he's asking, can this be used to treat for ant infestations? Chad, would you like to add to that about ants?
You know, from the standpoint of ants, it's really a bit of a seasonal concern.
Sorry, I think
the ants are going to be a big problem for the hive per se. The bees much. They're basically trying to find top cover and inner cover. You know, there's some different thoughts out there. I've heard of people using leaves from the walnut tree between your inner cover and top cover as a deterrent, and that's something that wouldn't bother the bees. I cannot say that I've tried it before, but I've heard that as a kind of a, for all intents and purposes, an organic use. I've also heard the use of cinnamon. There wouldn't be much of a concern with the health of the bees. I've heard cream of tartar, but I would stay away from using cream of tartar in the hive because I would be concerned that there could be some adverse effects or concerns for the bees because it has a different chemistry makeup than cinnamon does. Cinnamon doesn't have any toxic nature to it that I'm aware of. In powdered form, the bees aren't going to ingest it. They might walk across it per se in the hive, but I've heard those two ways as a organic means to deter ants. For me, I just go in and on my inspections, I'll just make sure and tap the inner covers out and clean the ants out every time I'm in. But you'll see them really slow down over the next couple of weeks as we get into the hotter, drier months or hotter, drier weeks. They'll slow down tremendously, and you won't see them as much in your hives.
Great. Thank you. Then Connie Merritt, she says, what can you treat the ground with to get rid of hive beetles? Jim Morford, I saw you laughing. I don't know if that was something you wanted to address, or are you man? Yeah, I don't think you have that problem.
I was just going to say, haven't moved to Western Kansas.
Yeah, that's why you're laughing.
we just don't see hive beetles out here. I don't know about Jim, but we've not. In 21 years before we moved from here, why we've not seen hive beetles at all. I think one time we didn't do anything, and they just disappeared. Never saw them again.
You're a bit drier most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know about guard star, but if you have beetles and they're going into the ground, and they're coming out of your hive, it's a little too late for your situation. So I've heard nematodes. You could purchase nematodes and spread those around your hive areas, but that's just those things can crawl, and they've measured them. They can crawl many feet. So even if you try to put tar paper down or something, they can still get through by going around. Cheryl answered that, guard star, and if you have hive beetle infestations though that are severe, she would consider moving your hive or use a Freeman trap, is what she said. So Andrew Schumacher is on, and he said, do you have any tips on getting bees to draw out supers? We were thinking of taking off the queen excluder and wanted your guys' thoughts on this. Becky, what would you say?
All of the things that you can't control. You need a really strong nectar flow. You do need a really strong hive. And so all of those together are going to work to build up those hives. And if they are not drawing wax, it's because they don't feel like they need to draw wax. And so it is frustrating for us as a beekeeper that we can't go, get it, girls, do it. But we can't. We just, you need to work with the season. And so that's part of the reason why when we're talking about buying a nucleus colony in the spring, that you look at what you're getting and so that it can build up rapidly, and how soon can you get those bees. We love swarms because when we want to draw wax, they are in the wax drawing mode. They want to draw wax. So when you get a swarm, yeah, give them a frame of something to keep them home, a little food, a little something, but then give them foundation. Let those girls go to work on it. So that's I don't know. I don't have any great tips. I wish I did. Lots of people, oh, don't use a queen excluder. We found that it really is about the nectar flow. If the nectar flow is good, they're going through that excluder like it isn't even there. If the nectar flow isn't good, you can't get them through it. So I don't know. I wish I had better answers. Anybody else that's, yeah.
No, well, all I can add to it is I've got over 100 supers. You have to think in terms of protein. And I bring this up, so you probably heard it before. The small hive beetle are after protein. What's protein? Larvae and pollen. The wax moth are after protein. What's protein to them? It's not the wax, it's the cocoons that are in the wax. So brood comb is full of cocoons. They're hungry for that protein. If you keep supers without letting the queen go up and lay eggs and create those cocoons and store those, you're going to have a lot easier time keeping them in good shape than you will if you're using brood comb. And wax moth will disappear after the temperatures cool off in August or November. We've got lows in the 40s or 30s. But they love warm temperatures, and the warmer it is, the faster they grow. And the faster you're going to lose your supers if you put them in storage too soon. So keep the queens out of it. That's my opinion. Use queen excluders. I've done it without, and I've done it with. If you're in got a heavy nectar flow on, you can get away with not using those. But if you put them on, you're taking that risk for the queen to go up there and lay, and that's going to create a situation that you may not want later on. For us hobbyists, I think Jim Kelly has a good practice where he doesn't use queen excluders, but he's throwing his supers on the right time, and they're filling them up, and he doesn't have those problems. So, is that right, Jim?
Yeah, that is what we're doing. We're trying to time it out just perfect. The other thing too is, when we were super yards and mega beekeeper, we all ran deeps just because of logistics and money. And that was difficult here in Kansas. While they got by with it in South Dakota and we could do that, we couldn't do it here. The queen would run up and brood up in those deeps. So what we did here was we put on shallows, or those 6 5/8 is what they are. And that stopped most of them. We still had an occasion where a queen would come up into a 6 5/8. But most of the time, if you timed it out right, she tended to leave those alone and stay in the bottom 2 boxes, and it works out well. The only time that we that would be the time I think that we'd use a queen excluder. If, I mean, hobby wise, probably, you know, I'm with Becky. I think probably queen excluders are important. You guys have to have those hives or those supers protected because wax moth is just unreal there. The only time I've seen a queen excluder be bad is on a real heavy honey flow, like in South Dakota with sweet clover nectar. It was coming in so fast that they just abandoned the top end and actually began to swarm real quick like. So that would be the only thing. And I doubt that you have those type of heavy honey flows over eastern Kansas. We certainly don't have that kind here in western Kansas. But
Thank you. Dana Gettle asked, should I worry about taking out drone brood? She's got one hive with one frame and had a third to a half drone brood that she bought a nuke in May. Nick Hockman, what would you say? Don't know. Cecil and Jolie, what would you advise?
We're not sure we heard the question. Is that Mike Shopper?
Dana Gettle, she's wondering if she should take out drone brood. She got a nuke and it has some drone comb in it, 1/3 to 1/2 on a frame. Personally, I wouldn't worry about it. But
on just one frame, or is it
one hive with one frame had 1/3 to a half drone brood? Yeah.
Yeah, if all the frames have, you know, worker brood, then it's probably not a big issue. But if more than, you know, if all of your frames are showing a lot of drone brood, then you may have a queen problem.
But you could work that frame to the outside too, and it'll become a honey frame right away, and you won't have so many drones in your hive.
Yeah. So if you read Tom Seeley's book, Honeybee Democracy, and his other one, I think he said about 20% of natural colonies are drone comb. So they raise drones. They'll fill it up with nectar and honey when they don't want to. But that's all I'll add to it. So does that answer your question, kind of? Too much work for me. Okay. Let's see. I think some of these have been answered. Marcia says she uses cinnamon on her inner cover. She checked 2 days later, didn't have any ants. That was in regards to the ant problem. She did have some small hive beetle larvae on a removable bottom board that she checked recently. She cleaned the board on the lawn. She figured the birds would eat the larvae, but should she have done that, or should she have found a way to kill the beetles? Anybody have any suggestion? I would say it depends on the size of the larvae. If they were small, you probably had a good chance that they wouldn't be big enough to survive. But if they were ready to crawl out, you know, may have just helped. Let's see, Mike Shopper said he's got a nuke that has plenty of bees, but no capped brood. He could not find a queen. Just stopping right there sounds like it's a big problem. So you sounds like you're queenless. Cheryl Burkhead has gotten a lot of experience with nukes over the last couple of years. He also says that he just checked Saturday, still no brood, plenty of bees and pollen, and a supersedure cell with larvae in it. How's it possible? Or is he mistaken and the workers are laying eggs? What does Cheryl say?
My big question is when's the last time you saw his queen in there? If he doesn't have any brood, not even any drone brood, it's been at least 24 days since he's had a queen in there. Supersedure cell.
They're wanting one. They just don't have a fertilized egg in there that's going to make a
Yeah,
good queen.
trying to make, yeah, you could try to introduce a queen if you've got another nuke that you could combine it with newspaper. I'd probably do that. Purchase a queen, depending on what you're trying to do. I mean, I can winter a 5 frame over a 5 frame, but if you're trying to build this into a 20 frame double deep hive, you're not going to do so by all that time you waste by introducing a frame of eggs and appropriate aged larvae, because you're going to be down so much time. I mean, that would be an option too. Let them make their own, but that's not really.
Well, let's ask Mike. Is this your only colony, Mike, or do you have others?
No, I've got 2 other colonies. This one was just kind of an experiment that looked like they were getting ready to swarm here earlier in the year. So I just took a frame out, put it in a nuke, and let nature take its course. And there's lots of bees in there, like I said, but there was no, the queen cells must have hatched out or whatever, but I didn't see any queen in there. But what was weird is that I saw a superseder cell in there with larvae in it, and I didn't think that that was even possible to do without a queen in there. I didn't know if the workers could go ahead and lay an egg, a superseder egg.
No.
Without it. I didn't think so. I thought it had to be an egg that was laid by the queen in order for that to turn into a queen. So that's, unless a queen flew in there and just laid an egg and left, I don't know how it could happen.
Yeah, they might be developing laying workers now at that point.
Yeah, but they can still make a superseder cell even though they're laying workers.
No.
So there are always 3 types of cells: worker cells, drone cells, and the queen cups that they put something in it. Then we call it a queen cell.
Yeah, this was in the middle of the frame. It was weird.
Yeah.
Oh well, I'll check it again.
I'd combine it with a strong hive if it
Yeah,
was.
I've got another strong hive that I can combine that with, and just
As long as you don't have laying workers. If you got multiple eggs and cells, then I'd go take them far away and shake them out.
Yeah, there's no eggs, no caps. It's just like they're using it as a storage facility because it's fairly close to my other hives. But I'll just combine them. That sounds like the right idea.
Yeah, that sounds like the best. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we've got in the chat. We can open it up to anybody that wants to ask anything verbally. We still have at least 10, 11 minutes.
If you've got a laying worker
issue, hi, Sean.
If you got a laying worker issue, you could, instead of just dumping them out, you can let them draw out comb and wait for them to meet their demise, and they'll draw out frames for you to use for other colonies. Right?
Yeah.
I've done it. I mean, it might be wrong, but I've done it. And that worked out for me. Instead of just dumping them out, I let them work for me. And then once they were done and died off, that's what it was. And I just used that comb for something else.
At any rate, not having a queen in there, you're going to have a weakening hive, which is a strengthening opportunity for a small hive beetle. So keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have a mess.
Yeah, but I mean,
and the comb will have all that drone brood stuff in there. It wouldn't be very good comb.
Yeah, you'll have drone brood in there. That you'll have the unfertilized eggs that they've placed, workers have laid that they're trying to raise. It's probably best to merge it this time of year.
But if they've already got
anything else happens.
But if they've already got a laying worker issue and you can't combine them, why not let them work until they're done?
Yeah. Tricky time of year. Anybody else have anything?
I have a question for being out of Western Kansas. I'm not all that familiar with Eastern Kansas, and we go by major flows, nectar flows, and minor nectar flows out here. So what is a major nectar flow in Eastern Kansas? And I mean, we can assume minor flows are just some type of flowers or or weeds that are growing, but what would be a major flow up there?
Yeah, so I'm in Kansas City in northern Johnson County. Our major nectar flow primarily right now is the yellow sweet clover I'm in the intersection of I-35, I-635, white Dutch clover, although I haven't seen much lately, but it came out a little early this year. But I'm not so sure that the clover flows on all that strongly, if I can put it that way, this week, even though the sun's been shining and it's warmed up. I think probably in Becky's area, they've got a terrific flow on. Cheryl says everything she's got kind of filled up early. Jolie, Cecil, they've got some yards, out in southern Johnson County and other places. How's it going out there?
You tell him. Well, we have yards that look great and have full supers on, and Cecil checked some today, but I don't know what he saw.
Yeah, it's the flow is not as strong as I had hoped it was going to be. They're bringing in and putting stuff in, but right now, what I checked today, it's not a super strong flow right now.
This year's been kind of strange. We had a lot of cooler temperatures and we had rain. The first part of the yellow sweet clover flow. And so the bees really couldn't get out and work it much in my area. And then we had them work it a couple of days. We got into the 80s over a week ago, and I could see them working some of the yellow sweet clover, but they're not even touching it in the backyard right now. I have some areas where the sweet clover is a little more delayed, and it might even just be 30 minutes east, Jim, that doesn't seem to have bloomed in certain areas all that much. And then I have others that seems like it's on the tail end. And even though we have the warmer, hotter weather now, I don't know if they're just catching the back end of the yellow sweet clover, and the white hasn't even started yet. And we don't have milkweed blooming because they'll work a lot of common milkweed in some of the areas that I'm at. So it's kind of strange. It almost seems like the blackberry dearth kind of in here between clover flows. I had bees working rough leaf dogwood. I never see bees work rough leaf dogwood or some coral bells. I mean, it's kind of strange. Some of the apiaries are, putting quite a bit away. Others haven't really even filled a super yet. So it's a little strange this year. But normally our clover flow is usually late May or first part of June, and then we go into July, early July, before it kind of shuts down on us.
I wonder if the last late frost we had didn't contribute to that erratic nectar flow. I think it really damaged some areas. I think it was a frost that wasn't really blanketing the area so much, but really hit some areas harder than others. We have neighbors 5 miles from here who have apple trees loaded with apples and other fruit. We don't have a pear for anything because they just all got wiped out. Well, sometimes those late frosts will also affect our clover and our like yellow sweet clover. It seems it blooms, but I'm not sure it produces nectar the way that it should. And so I think that's contributing to the variability. Jim, as far as what is a minor nectar flow, I think that here in Eastern Kansas, it's so many things. It can vary from area to area. The black locust can be a really nice flow. Sometimes it does nothing. That's early on. Then blackberries may produce you some good honey. And as the summer goes on, sunflowers can be really good in some areas and then not so much in others. I think that we're just so diverse here in Eastern Kansas that you really need to look at where your hives are. You said, look at that 2-mile area where your hives fly. I think that we need to do that a lot. In Western Kansas, you don't have as much diversity. So I don't know. I think that's really hard for me to say what are our minor flows.
So another factor is precipitation. Normally, I'm east northern Johnson County, 5 miles from the Missouri state line. According to the Weather Channel, our annual monthly rainfall for May is 5.14 inches, and we receive more than twice that amount. And so if the plants get too much rain, everything is hunky-dory with them. What causes them to want to produce seed is a little bit of stress because they need to pass on. So, I mean, that's kind of like what I learned way back in my biology classes a long, long time ago. So a little bit of stress, like last year, for example, we had a drought in the month of June, and it was fantastic, major honey flow. And I agree with Becky. At least for us over here in this area, our minor honey flow typically starts with the black locust, which for several years has been blooming in April, but most of the time it's early May.
Well, I've got a couple of yards that are near locust, and I kind of watched it this year. And the rain kind of held off at the beginning of it. So I had a few yards that took advantage of it, and then the rains came, but there were some areas that they did take advantage of it. I noticed it, the rain just held off for a week or so, and they were filling supers up.
Yeah, and temperature is a factor too. I mean, just last weekend, Memorial Day weekend, we were in the upper to mid 40s, 48 and 46, and bees start clustering at 56, 57. So they were clustering like it was wintertime in the over the weekend, just a weekend ago. So we're just kind of coming out of the woods.
I've seen a couple of questions online about bearding. Does anybody, I think this is the time of year when we start seeing our hives beard. Is anybody noticing that already?
I probably did a month ago, but I'm not seeing any now.
I had a few the other day that did. Got hot, no wind, they were bearding.
Anybody else seeing any bearding? We'll start pictures and showing them in the Facebook group, I'm sure.
I've got plenty.
Yeah.
Nick Hockman, have you seen any?
Few yards that I've seen a few of our yards that it's been interesting. It's the stronger hives that have the more supers on. I was seeing some hives that had, 3 or 4 plus supers on were the ones bearding, whereas and obviously those are hives that are a little stronger and higher populations, but it was interesting to see that anything with 2 or less honey supers weren't, and the ones with more were. So I kind of attribute that just to higher populations because they were hives that are producing heavier, thus they've got more workers.
I had nukes bearding, Chad.
Yeah, I should say I've still got 7 nukes that I've got to place in a new apiary on a new farm, new lavender farm that and I had a couple of those bearding only because they're building up so heavy. So hopefully I can get them in the next day or so.
You can try to put a little more ventilation between the inner cover and the lid. And that sometimes helps. In your 10 frames, you can add a slatted rack above the bottom board. It's just another piece of equipment to purchase, but that helps considerably too.
But everything, you make sure you're checking and staying on top. Everything that I've checked super wise, I'm having to go around and add another super. And I had 2 on originally, and some of those were full, and I've added 2 more. So be sure you're out there checking. You don't want to miss out if you don't have to. So
Well,
even though it's a little slow, it may turn around.
Drone super if you have it over just foundation.
But this is the best time of year if you're brand new or if you're new for the last couple of years. This is the best time of year to get a chance to get drawn comb. So try to take advantage of it. Anything else? I know next month it's going to be a different set of problems, but I'm sure we'll still be seeing small high beetle.
Christy isn't on here tonight, I don't believe, but we ought to mention that this month we're going to have a real live in-person meeting. Cheryl's finishing up the buzzer. I know she's been working on it, so you get your newsletter, but we're going to meet. I can't remember where it is because I don't think I've ever been there before. So somebody else will have to help, but we should talk about a real live meeting. We're still going to do question and answer at the first part of the month. We're still going to do a Zoom thing, but I hope people will come out. Who wants to tell what the meeting is about? Cheryl, you probably have all that information.
It's 2 weeks from tonight, 7 o'clock, Pollinator Project Garden in Olathe. Waiting for Cheryl to butt in. I can give you the address here.
I had my mute on. Actually in the newsletter, Christy had said the meeting will start at 6:30.
Okay.
And it's at the Pollinator Prairie Garden in Olathe, which is located at 320 South Blake Street. If you want to bring a sack supper, bring your own bag. If you want to bring your supper with you, bring your own sack supper, bring a beverage, and make sure you bring your lawn chair. The club's going to provide honey ice cream, and Jolie and Cecil are going to get them packaged in individual serving sizes. And then serving cups,
Big
right,
cups.
Jolie? Huh?
Yes.
And then Chip Taylor, he's a professor emeritus in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at KU, as well as he was the founder of Monarch Watch, will be speaking. And then Sammy Aaron, who's an extension master naturalist, will be there, as well as Joe Patrick, and she's working on her master beekeeping certification. And so they're going to have be presenters that evening, but you'll be able to be outside, socially distance, and hopefully we'll pray we don't have any rain or thunderstorms or anything like that, but it's supposed to start at 6:30.
And we are going to try to do a Zoom session from that point, but we were going to test it out first. So people who may not be able to make it might be able to get on Zoom. Well, with that, the hour's up. We can.
For your library books, see that you've had them for a year and a half. If you have library books, bring your library books. You've had them for a year and a half, so go find them. And then the third Thursday of the month, we'll have a program on pollen and propolis with by Zoom, presented by the Kansas honey producers. And it's Petra Anhart, who's written Beehive Alchemy,
That one
Beeswax
you do
Alchemy
not
will be
want to miss.
presenting.
We've had Petra at our previous Fun Day several years ago, and she has a great book on beeswax, and that's the title, Beeswax Alchemy and Beehive Alchemy.
Jolie, did you want to say anything about your mentoring? You still have a couple of dates. No,
Yes, I screwed up today. I posted this morning that it was tonight. I knew I had something tonight, but it wasn't that. So next Monday is our mentoring, and it'll be here at the house. It's costs $10. The money goes to the youth scholarship and the military mentorship program. And
you don't
I
have a
think
meeting in July, right?
we're meeting in July, but not the second. We're going to be out of town the second Monday, so we're doing it the fourth Monday.
Well, I need to fix that because I didn't have any meeting for July at all. So the 26th?
Yes.
And I have on my calendar next Monday is Jim Morford's birthday. Is it Wanda's also?
Are they gone?
Yes.
Yeah, I do appreciate you flying your flag for my birthday.
Okay. 75?
Woo, man. That's
About time.
that's old.
Hey, I did want to mention, for those that are interested, this is Chad. We have an opportunity coming up that will really help to put pollinators in general in a good light. We've been gifted with an opportunity to present and have some great exposure for our farm, and we're going to be a zip trip on Channel 4. So they do a program where they offer opportunities to get away from the city and take a day trip out to a some type of entertainment or educational facility. And so on June 21st, we're going to have Channel 41 or Channel 4 come out and do 4 hours of film, and we're really going to hit hard on the full focus and the all-encompassing of all pollinators and that critical importance they are to our ecosystem. And then following up on July 2nd, they're going to do a live remote from our farm for 4 hours, doing the news and doing their program from our farm. So we'll really get some great exposure for pollinators across the board, and we'll be able to roll out our our new butterfly house and really talk about the plight of different pollinators and how important they are as a whole to agriculture, and then just our ecosystem in general. So we're really excited about that. So if you're interested, July 2nd, there'll be a live feed from the farm. So if you're ever interested in just seeing what's going on and what we have to offer from an educational component, we'd love to have you join in and watch.
So, and how are you going to advertise that?
What do you mean?
How are people going to find out and sign up or come out and put it on their calendars?
Well, I guess I need to touch base with the executive producer of Fox 4, because they didn't say anything about having crowds or having people in attendance. So that's something that I need to reach out to them and ask that question first, because what they wanted to do on that first 4 hour piece when they come out on June 21st is they want to ask, what are the 4 can't miss things when you come to visit Next to Nature Farm? And we want to focus on that pollinator component with the different things that we do here at the farm. So I will check on that, and if they allow or say that that'd be a good idea, I will post that on the club website or on the club Facebook page if anybody has their daytime hours open, because at both times they'll be out between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. Because that's the the time period in which they're either doing the show or looking to get content for upcoming newscasts. So just something we're really excited about.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And with that, I think we can close the evening. So unless anybody has anything real quick, thank you very much for joining. Stay cool. Got to think about turning the AC on now. So
It's done. It's on.